to use the Howard Springs facility at Darwin, which housed those evacuating from Wuhan at the beginning of the year, as part of quarantine facilities to get as many as 3,000 extra Australians home a fortnight from overseas. Here is the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, on Friday flagging that Howard Springs was an option.
Now, in particular, Howard Springs is a facility that we will be able to use to deal with those type of evacuation charters if they become necessary. Now, at present, we don't have any of those currently planned.
Those statements from the PM coming after the lifting of the cap of those coming from overseas from 4,000 to 6,000 per week. Even though the PM said it was a decision, in his words, to lift the cap around overseas arrivals per week on Thursday, on Friday, while he got the agreement from Western Australia and Queensland at National Cabinet, they have delayed lifting that cap by a couple of weeks. So the states have the power in this pandemic once again. Former top bureaucrat Jane Holton has given a preliminary report to the government on hotel quarantine, where she has said capacity could be substantially increased. Howard Springs used to take 3,000 a fortnight. She questioned why Kiwis were being quarantined, which the PM is acting on. And she has questioned whether everyone needs to be quarantined for 14 days. If they come from a low-risk country, that could be reduced to 7 days with greater testing, for example. It is clear the reluctance of the states, except for New South Wales, post the Victorian outbreak, to where the blame, should there be an outbreak from quarantine, is not helping in terms of getting an estimated 24,000 Australians home from overseas. The other big sticking point with WA and Queensland is the amount of domestic travellers with exemptions they are quarantining at the moment. So that's taking up quarantine space. Ultimately, if Australia wants to allow international students and business people back into the country during this pandemic, there would have to be quarantine facilities for tens of thousands, not just 4,000 to 6,000 a week. This has been discussed in the government. There would have to be strong contact tracing and testing in place were this to happen, with perhaps tests at days 10, 11 and 14 of quarantine. The federal government believes even if it were to charter flights and house people in facilities like Howard Springs, something the opposition has called for, it would need the states to agree to this in terms of lifting the cap. Otherwise, they could just refuse to take people out of Howard Springs after 14 days amidst a fear 1% of people can contract the virus after the 14-day period.